This week, we are continuing our conversation with Katelynn Togiai from Ignite Hotels. She was so chock full of wisdom and insights that we couldn't fit it all into one episode. So we are lucky enough to have her back with us today. And you won't want to miss this episode where she shares not only how you can help bridge the gap between sales leadership and sales teams, but how using assumptive selling and presuming the sale might actually be costing you business. So we'll dive in on this episode, but if you missed the first half of the interview with Katelynn, go back and listen to that because you won't want to miss all of her insights and wisdom. Welcome to Sales Fiction, a podcast that helps small sales teams get big results. I'm your host, Christy Lawrence, the founder of Mighty Sales and a longtime sales professional who traded my corporate sales career to help small but mighty teams do more with less. Each week on this podcast, we separate sales fact from sales fiction so that you can hyper-focus your effort on the skills, strategies, and tools that will have the biggest impact on your bottom line. Let's dive right in. We just essentially take turns making cold calls, making follow-up calls, whatever the goal is. And we do it once a week, every week, consistently.
What do you call it? Like, I swear you call it
Power Hour.
Yeah, Power Hour. Exactly.
And I do it with multiple clients.
New. Even if you're an experienced salesperson,
Absolutely.
You're going to learn a new trick, a new something from somebody else.
I really like the way that you did that. Or like, there's one that sticks out to me. It's so simple, but I talk so fast. Mm-hmm. And I was listening to this person make sales calls and he says the phone number so slow. And I'm like, that's better than saying it 3 times. Like I might say it again, the number is blah, blah, blah. I still don't know how they write it down.
It's crazy. Phone number etiquette, guys. You have to say it slow.
So slow, but it was such a good reminder. And after people do it 3 or 4 times with the team, again, you have to set it up so that it's a safe space and it's positive reinforcement. It's not about critiquing. They look forward to it and they all become better because of it. But I do think it's nerve-wracking. And as sales leaders, actually being willing to sit down still and make those calls and do it in front of your team is probably the best training you can do.
I would agree completely. Yeah, I was telling you, we just had a blitz and it ended up being over a couple weeks because the schedules and the smoke and the fires didn't help too. And I haven't had to do the last few because I do those big contracts, but you don't blitz on airlines. Like they book every 3 years contracts, big ones. And so I did it this time and I was emailing them every day. I'm like, all right, I've already sent more calls than half of you. So you guys have to be like, I'm still answering your emails and approving your contracts. So you guys should be beating me. And, just bring them that little competition inspiration and showing them that, hey, I set these goals, but I'm doing them too. Yeah. And I'm going to surpass them because that's what I kind of expect. I set goals, but I really want them to go way over. So,
yeah. But I do feel like oftentimes there becomes a really big gap between sales leadership and people that are doing sales. Mm-hmm. And that it's important for sales leaders, even if it's once a month or once a quarter, not just to watch their team members and observe and coach, but get out there, get your hands dirty. Yeah. Because that helps you help your team succeed.
I would agree.
And it sounds like you're absolutely doing that. So I know that I've heard a lot of advice in my career in sales that I was like, maybe I tried it and it didn't work, or just hearing it, I was like, oh, heck no, I'm not going to do that. There's a lot of bad sales advice out there. What's the worst piece of sales advice you've ever received?
I've kind of thought about this and it might sound crazy and it might not be for everyone, but it goes back to qualifying a bit, but it's going for the hard sale. Like, at least for me, it's just never worked. And someone has told me, always have that contract printed because if they come in, have it ready, preemptively printed, ready to go, which could be good. But I have found, especially for bigger clients, even for some of the small ones, it's more almost offensive to people than it is a convenience. And I didn't do this because I'm way more of a roundabout salesperson and I end up usually winning my contracts. But this gal actually who kind of helped train me when I first came on, she was at a hotel. We sold separately for hotels, but she still trained me. And she had this huge contract, new clients in the area. They wanted to do a holiday party. And the space that this gal sold for was twice as much as the space that I had. So when I was doing catering sales, and she just assumed also because of the space that, they don't have anywhere else to go. They have to come to us. So she had this meeting she went to the meeting with the contract. And the contact was like, what? We didn't agree to this. Like, you said that this is your proposal, but we haven't said yes yet. And you already have this contract in hand. Like, that's pretty presumptive of you, you know? And they were so offended by it and just put off by it a bit that they ended up not wanting to work with her. And they reached out to, I actually know a different friend whose husband also worked for this company. So I had kind of an inside connection. She didn't pass it over to me, or maybe she did. I don't quite remember. It was a while ago. But they came to our space, which again was half the size. And we just got creative and we put a lot of stuff in the hallways. And it was like a $25,000, maybe close to $30,000 one day holiday event.
That's
and
awesome.
Just because this person thought like, well, they have nowhere else they can go. You know, you can't be confident just because you have, maybe you think you're the only space or the right fit.
Yeah.
No, people will be flexible if you don't show them the respect and that you really want their business. Assuming you have their business is going to make some people turn away.
It's so true. Like, I think people, want to feel like they have choices. So even if they don't have choices, if you can help them make a choice to you where they feel like they have agency in that, they're going to be a happier customer and they want to feel like you're earning their business. They want to feel valued and important. I actually was just talking to, literally just before we got into this call, a prospect for a client of mine that I do sales for. And he was saying, you need to be marketing this to everybody who has XYZ because you're the only option that's compatible with this. And I said, I totally appreciate that. I'm great. We are. But we don't want you to be our customer because it's the only thing that works. We want you to be our customer because you love what we offer and we feel like it's going to work for you. And I think he was a little bit taken aback, like, yes, of course. But, you know, also, and I'm like, and that's great. But if we're just going and assuming that we're going to win your business because of that, we are doing a disservice to you as the potential customer and to us as like business too.
And also, just a side note and track on this, but another thing that you should never do, and it's probably pretty common knowledge, but you never want to put down your competitors. I mean, it makes you look tacky and a little desperate. There's ways to sell your business without having to put down another person's business.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important is you don't need to be cutthroat in that kind of way because it just, what are you going to do to this, your client potentially one day? If you can say this about someone else, you know, they might have that in the back of their mind. And to me, it's just not their business. I would never want to put down someone else. You know, I might make a joke about, well, they're pretty far. There's some traffic to get to that hotel, you know, but I'm never going to talk about who they are as a company or unless there was something horrible that this person needed to know and it was, you know, safety concern or whatever. But, you know, winning business on your own is important.
Absolutely. And I think ultimately too, you can set it up, in my opinion, to have your customers think through those on your own by asking strategic questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you know you have an advantage, but then they're the ones that are saying it versus you, which makes it feel totally like a different conversation.
Completely was. And it was actually about traffic. I met with this huge, it's actually the biggest one of the three. I told you I was working on these deals. I'm trying to close one out of the three. The third one's the biggest. And I asked, because I kind of knew that they were going somewhere else. And I said, you know, are you headed to another hotel today? Do you have other tours? You know, you might not be able to tell me. And he's like, well, we do. And these big ones, they won't ever really, aren't supposed to tell you who the competitors are. I was like, we do. He's like, it's somewhere. He's like, we'll see. I was like, okay. I was like, I kind of thought so. It's okay. I was just confirming if, you know, there was other people aside from the person that already has the contract, blah, blah, blah. And then within a couple minutes, he's like, well, you know, location is really key. We want to get from point A to B quickly because our crews need sleep and we don't want to worry about traffic. And that's when I made that joke because I knew where my biggest competitor was, which is far down G-Way and on traffic. And I was like, oh yeah, like that G-Way traffic. And he laughed. He's like, oh, you know more than I thought you knew. But you know, he did bring it up and I was able to then comment on it.
100%. Yeah. And I think
we laughed.
Your customers are already aware of the pros and cons of both of you and the competitor. I think part of that, what you're saying about like being assumptive and how that can be a disadvantage is when we assume that our customers aren't smart and aren't going to be aware of these things ahead of time, but helping them pull out how that impacts their bottom line or what it is that they value, where they are the ones
when you're driving. And he said this all to me, you know,
exactly.
And I'm like, see, you know, he knew it. Like you said, they're smart, especially these big companies and these big contracts are working on. They know what they're doing. And you don't have to tell them the pros and cons, the basic ones. They already know. It's a matter of how you can really sell your pros to them.
And the difference between you saying you really want to be mindful of traffic and your crews need sleep and blah, blah, versus what are your thoughts on location? Are you kind of, oh, and then they tell you that they believe it so much more when they've said it than when you've said it.
Agreed. Completely agree. So,
I'm like, the more you can get your clients to talk about what's not good about your competitors, not directly, but like what they don't like, what they're worried about, and what they do like about you versus you doing it, more likely you are to succeed.
It helps them realize that the decision hopefully they're about to make is the right one because they already knew it.
Yes, exactly. So what do you feel like is the most important thing that someone should work on to be successful in sales? I know you work with a lot of new people, your sales directors.
Going out and networking is really important. I mean, you and I might know that, right? Because that's how we met, actually. But my boss, when I first started with this company, made every salesperson actually join some sort of networking event. So whether it was business after hours or a B&I group or Kiwanis or something. And, some of us that really all of us probably respect our time after work, push back on it. Well, I have found that I have made so many more connections by doing this. And it's kind of sales 101, but some people, especially when they're new to sales, I've already been here from 8 to 5 all day. I don't want to go to this 6 p.m. event, or I can't be at work at 7 a.m. That's so early. Like, I don't want to attend this meeting, and it's redundant sometimes. And sometimes the networking events can be. But you can just grow so much as a person, and eventually that will help your business grow. Really making sure you're networking in your community. You're giving other people leads and referrals. You're not always asking for the business. You're giving business when you can and connecting people. And that's huge because then people will come back to you. And I've made so many more connections in this community just attending all of these events. And I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, it's awesome. And there can be a lot of opportunities down the road because of it.
Absolutely. And I think what you just said is so important, that when you're networking, it's not just about meeting people that might be potential customers for you, but thinking about your network more holistically. Oh, if I meet this person who maybe can help this person and make an introduction, that goes so long in the long term.
One day will come back, hopefully, and they'll remember and be appreciative. And even if it doesn't, I mean, we're all here to help each other. So what can we do to help our fellow salesperson or fellow businessman or woman?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was meeting with a potential prospect for my business earlier today, and they went our initial conversation. We're saying, we are prioritizing. Do we need to focus on sales or do we need to focus on operations? And I have a business owner here who we have known each other for a long time who helps companies with operations. So for me to just be able to be a resource, like, let's talk about sales. When you're ready to tackle operations, make sure you talk to X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm helping that person, but then they see me as a more strategic resource, not just someone who's trying to win their business.
Yes, definitely. It's a true partnership.
Absolutely. I will say the other thing about networking, it's not just going to the networking events, and I have to be super intentional about this. Once you start going to networking events and you have a good contact list, I think there's a tendency to go hang out with the people you know.
Yeah.
And I can be the biggest. Like, oh, hey, it's like a thing out there. Hi, Katelynn.
Have our little niche. Yeah.
Like, let's all hang out. And I have to always be like, okay, yes, I'm going to catch up with my friends and hang out, but also at every networking event, I'm like, I'm going to meet 2 new people.
Yes. 100%.
And just set a goal of that, because otherwise, not to say that it's a waste of time, it's just not as strategic as at the time if you just go hang out with people you already have relationships with.
If we go to chamber luncheons and stuff as a sales team, I'm definitely not against my team sitting at the same table. And sometimes, like my boss before me, she hated that. I'm like, okay, when you're sitting and they're talking, you're not at that point really networking, but you guys need to disperse before the event, go out, each of you meet, because if you 3 girls that work in the same office together are just sitting together all day, that defeats the purpose.
Like, that's fun.
First, meet people, talk to people. And, they also all sell different things in the hotel. One might do event space, one does sports rooms, the other's, convention sales. And so, hey, you might have someone that you met and you can then bring over to Jane Doe or whoever and connect each other at that point. But divide and conquer in the meantime.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually at a networking event last night that I went with one of my closest friends. Like, we carpooled together. So I'm like this. Sometimes it's easier to just go by yourself because then you're going to talk to somebody. And we were in the drink line And there's someone behind us who's by himself. And I'm like, oh, this is such an easy way to start talking.
Yeah.
We're 6 feet apart in masks. The new world of networking. Like, hey, what brings you to this event? And starting a conversation. And I was so surprised because I just started chatting with him. And she like bounced out and went and sat down, where I'm like, you should just also introduce yourself. Be part of a conversation. And I was talking to her about, she's like, I just got kind of shy. Ran away.
It happens. It happens to the best of us.
It's happened to me before too, but it's just that reminder that, and I mean, how many times have you gone to a networking event and you see someone sitting at a table by themselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Plenty.
And to think about what it's like to be that person. And if you go talk to them, you have made that person stay.
Exactly. Make them feel comfortable. It could be their first one. It could be whatever it may be. And reaching out is so important. And those are the easiest ones, like you said, to reach out to. It's way less intimidating to go talk to a single person than it is a group of 3 or 4 or 5 people that already know each other.
100%. Like when in doubt, just find the person sitting by themselves. I guarantee you, at any networking event, there will be one person standing in the corner or sitting at a table by themselves. Go say hi, introduce yourself.
It'll be better for both of you.
Yes, absolutely. So I really appreciate you being here. Before we wrap up, you have shared so much wisdom and insight, but is there anything else that you feel like sales leaders or people new to sales should know about, focus on?
You just have to know. I truly think it's knowing your clients, knowing your community, knowing your market, be the expert where you live, but not being afraid to ask for advice or input or insight. I mean, I am such a person that I will go to so many people to kind of see their opinions. And hey, I might not take that advice. It might not be what I go to, but I do that also for my teams. I get their input so much and their buy-in because they're way more likely to follow my direction. I'm not going to be a dictator. And that should be how it is for your clients and your team. Get people's opinion because you're only going to grow. Get people's advice.
Yeah, 100% love that. And I think it's so true and I actually think that the higher up you go in your career, the more important that is, because you can still learn new things and people feel more engaged in the process.
People stay because of their bosses. And people leave because of their bosses, actually.
100%. Yeah. And especially in sales. I mean, I hear that a lot, especially for companies that maybe initially hire people who are newer to sales. There's a hesitation about investing in them because they're worried like, okay, we're going to take this inexperienced person. They're going to get good. And then they're going to have all these opportunities and leave. And that might not be true, but I'm like, well, the other alternative is they don't get good and they stay.
Yeah, that's a problem too.
Not going to help anyone. Yeah. But you also have to believe in your culture and how you are setting your team up that people are going to want to stay. And that's on you as the leader.
Yeah. The only people, I'm not saying, kind of only, at least since I've been back in Tri-Cities, that have all left on good accord. It's been for a promotion that I couldn't give them. And now they are people that I can go to in this industry that we give each other business. My hotels hold out this day. Hey, you go here. Like everyone's, because I truly respect and value all of my employees. And even when they leave, as long as they're not, screwing me over on their way out, but I've never done that to them. And I've just maintained and built some great relationships, and it'll continue as, I go in this career and many, hopefully, markets too.
Yeah. When people leave on good accord, they can be a cross referral source.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Katelynn. I really appreciate it. You are such a gift to your team and you have so much wisdom and insight, and I really appreciate you. And I'm super happy that I met you at a networking event.
Same, exactly. Me as well. And this was so fun. Thank you so much for having me.